Welcome to A Daily Change of Mind. I'm Stephen Clemens. It is December 10th, 2018. Hope you all had a good weekend and everything. It's been a little while since I've been done a video, I believe since about Monday of last week. But that's because I've been debating on what I wanted to do as far as the video is concerned. And today I decided, actually it's been about a week now, I decided that I'm going to be starting a new series on discipleship. It's a major topic. I believe there's a lot of confusion about it. It's vitally important to our this faith walk that we have with Christ and what we have all been called to be a part of. So I debated for about a week on how I should get into this topic and how I should basically do an introduction to it. And I came across an article that I thought did a fantastic job. It's a lot better than what I had, at least I believe it's a lot better than what I had tried to prepare to introduce this topic. So, and if this is a new topic to you, I pray that you stick around and that you don't go anywhere and that you listen to these messages on this topic over and over. And even if you have heard of this topic before, maybe this might give you a little bit different perspective on it. So I don't want to take too long. I don't know if I'm going to get all the way through this article that I have. If not, we'll pick it up again in another video. So let's just go ahead and get into it. I'm just going to read it to you. This article is titled, "Are you a Christian or a disciple? And is there a difference? And why it matters." It says, "There is a considerable confusion among God's people about a very important question. Does Jesus Christ offer two acceptable standards for living the Christian life? A less demanding one for ordinary Christians, and an optional, more challenging version for those who commit themselves to be disciples. Does Christ offer two different standards of living? One that's just your ordinary Christian, that they are saved, and another one that is for others who want to take it to the next level of commitment, if you will, as disciples. The way we answer this question is vitally important. It shapes our identity, the way we live, our witness to the watching world, and our rewards in the life to come." And that's an important one, the rewards in the life to come, and that'll be very important as we go through this series and as we lay it out in the future. Fortunately, this is not an abstract theological issue that is beyond our reach. For the most part, the confusion is rooted in a failure to understand the meaning and the use of the words Christian and disciple in the New Testament. This is actually good news because the definition of these words can be readily determined and their use in the Bible easily observed. However, most of us have not delved into this deeply, and I believe that's accurate. Most of us haven't. We have absorbed the ideas of denominations, congregations, pastors, parachurch groups, or individuals. Then we have read these two words, Christian and disciple, through those different lenses. I encourage you to approach this subject with a commitment to seek truth, whether or not it conforms to your current views. And I believe that's what we should do regardless of the subject. We should be like the Jews in Berea who listened to Paul carefully and then searched the scriptures to see if what he said was true. Acts 17:11. Origin and meaning of the word Christian. Let's begin looking at the origin and meaning of the word Christian and observe how it is used in the New Testament. Given the fact that it designates the Christian's identity You may be surprised that this word occurs only 3 times in the New Testament. The word Christian only appears in the New Testament 3 times. But those 3 are sufficient to tell us what we need to know. In Greek, Christian is the word Christianos or Christianoi. I don't know if I pronounced that exactly right, but it means adherent or followers of Christ. That is, those who belong to him, or men of Christ, or women of Christ. The word emerged in the pagan city of Syrian Antioch, but how is unclear. It could have been a term devised by the Gentile believers to distinguish themselves from the local Jews. The renowned New Testament scholar F.F. Bruce recognizes the possibility that, quote, that it was the disciples who first began to call themselves Christians, meaning thereby servants of Christ. However, he also suggests, as John Stott and many others do, that the name may have been the natural outgrowth of the believers speaking so much about Christ that Gentiles began to describe themselves as, quote, the Christ people or Christians. Stott sees this as a positive since it marked out the disciples as being above all the people, the followers, the servants of Christ. C.K. Barrett comments, quote, the new designation was probably needed when it first became apparent that the believers who had left their old Gentile way of life were no more Jews than heathens. In fact, a third race of Christians. Others have suggested that Christian, the term Christian, was of derision bestowed by non-believers, that the term stuck and was subsequently embraced with honor, as were the name Puritans and Methodists many centuries later. We can't know for sure, but certainly the term Christian was an apt term, and it was probably a welcome development to distinguish the disciples of Jesus who had recently fled the rampant persecution in Jerusalem from the Jewish community in Antioch, which is greatly disliked by the contemporary Greeks. So intensely were the Jews hated that in AD 40, Gentile mobs killed many of them and destroyed their synagogues. What do we know about the word what we do know about the word Christian is that sometime about AD 44 to 47 in Syria, it became a term to refer to the growing number of people who were becoming followers of Jesus Christ. This appears to have been providential inasmuch as it freed the disciples of Jesus from being seen as Jews and allowed them to carry on the Great Commission. I know I'm reading a lot and it might be boring to some, but I'm reading to you this history, but this will become vitally important as we go on, because I want you to have just like any other topic, like I'm doing like on the He is Risen series, or any of them, salvation. I want this to be clear to you what these different things are, especially concerning this topic of, is there a difference between being a Christian and being a disciple? So that's why I'm going through this, because this is a great introduction to this question, because there's, like I said, it's a confused topic for many. So let's look at these 3 uses. You don't have to go through them in your Bible unless you want to. You can write them down however you want to. It's up to you. But if not, you can review this video and review the scriptural references that are provided. 3 New Testament occurrences. Additional insight comes from observing how the word Christian is used and viewed by Peter and Paul as reflected in its 3 New Testament occurrences. Taking them in reverse order, we find in 1 Peter, written in the early 60s AD on the eve of Nero's persecution, the name Christian is used as a badge of honor. a badge of honor. And if we go to 1 Peter chapter 4, starting in verse 14, it reads, "If ye be reproached for the name of Christ, happy are ye, for the Spirit of glory and God resteth upon you, and their part is evil spoken of. But on your part he is glorified. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. Yet, if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God on this behalf." It was a badge of honor. And here, Peter not only presupposes the common use of the name Christian throughout the Roman Empire, he also sees it as intimately bound up with the name of Christ and urges fellow believers not to be embarrassed by it, but rather to glorify God through it. With such a strong endorsement, it is clear that he embraces the name Christian as an appropriate term to describe believers in Jesus at that time. Indeed, shortly after penning these words, both Peter and Paul and many others would suffer martyrdom in Rome and at the hands of Nero for being Christians. This same acceptance of the name Christian is true of Paul. In Luke's second use of the term, King Agrippa, while listening to Paul defend himself in court in AD 57 through 59, said in Acts 26:28, we'll go there real quick. Like I said, if I don't get through all this, I will continue it on until we do get through it all. And by the way, this is not going to be some short series. I mean, this is going to be an ongoing one. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I don't believe necessarily that it'll ever end, but we'll see, huh? So, in chapter 26 of Acts, verse 28, we read, "King Agrippa, believest thou the prophets? I know that thou believest." Then Agrippa said unto Paul, "Almost thou persuaded me to be a Christian." The fact that Agrippa used the word to describe those who believed what Paul believed, and that Paul did not contest the word, suggests both its widespread use and its acceptability to Paul as a description of disciples of Jesus. The fact that Peter commended the word, and that neither Paul the theologian nor any of the other inspired writers of the New Testament raised any questions about is strong evidence of apostolic approval. Luke's first use of the name Christian gives us an even clearer understanding of what Luke means by the word and its relationship to the word disciple, and why Peter and Paul both embraced it. In Acts 11, go there. Acts 11, verse 26. Let's see here. It says, "Then departed Barnabas to Tarsus to seek Saul, and when he had found him, he brought him unto Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people, and the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch." He notes in Acts 11:26 that in Antioch the disciples were first called Christians. We just read that. In other words, the name Christian is essentially a synonym for the word disciple and does not represent a separate category of believer. Or at least it did not do so in those days. Perhaps the best way to sum it up is to say that a true Christian was understood to be a disciple of Jesus. There was no difference between the two. Although this equivalence later became distorted, it remains true that in the New Testament, that the words Christian and disciple refer to the same thing. So you might be asking, well, what are you trying to tell me? I'm trying to tell you by this, and this article, we're not done reading this, that when you trust and when you have a change of mind, as I've laid out in my other message in the Salvation Series, you can go back and look at it and review those messages. When you have a change of mind about Jesus Christ and what He has done for you, and shedding His precious blood, dying, being buried, and raised again, and placing His blood upon that heavenly mercy seat, and you are saved, you are in that moment a disciple. There is no separate standard between being saved and being a disciple. You either are or you're not. You can't be one and not the other. You either are or you're not. And when you are saved by Christ, you are now a disciple of Him. Some, as we're going to read later, and this author makes a great point, I believe most are genuine followers of Christ in that they trust in Jesus Christ as their Savior. But they have, because pastors or whoever or congregations or whatever have failed to reveal unto these people the truth of what they've been saved for and the purposes that God has for their lives thereafter, from the moment of salvation on. And that's why I want to do this topic, because I debated about it. I didn't know which direction I should go. I even made a list of what is the purpose of a daily change of mind. Is it just to preach salvation and to set people free concerning that? That's part of it. Am I to cater to you as a person and just as a quote Christian and tell you what, things that make you feel good for 30 minutes? No. My goal, as I made that list and I prayed about it, it became clear that my goal cannot be that. My goal is, as I've said before, to set you free concerning salvation and how that comes about a change of mind and trusting and faithing in what Jesus Christ did for you alone for salvation. My job is also to prepare you for this walk. There's other topics I got to get to outside of this topic as well. But I cannot separate this and only preach on salvation and things that make you feel good about what Christ is going to do for you in the here and now. I cannot do that. And if I did that, then I would be selling you short. Because just like this says here, it says that a true Christian was understood to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. There was no difference between the two. I know I spent 12 years or more of my Christian life not realizing that I was also called to be a disciple. We all are. There is no separation between the two. There is no one standard for one, and then, hey, a person that wants to commit themselves even more can go on to be a disciple. No, we're all called to be part of the same thing. And that's why I thought this article is a good introduction to this, because I think there are many of us who are true Christians in that we go to Christ for salvation in Him alone. But we are not taught to grow in what Christ wants us to be as disciples, as learners, and which is a shallow definition, and I will read some more about it. I got about 5 minutes. I think I'm going to have to hold off on that second part until the next time. But this topic is extremely important. And I'm not talking about, I know in the salvation messages, and the change of mind messages, I said there is no works. And that is 100% true, and I will never back down from that. Concerning salvation, there is no works. That does not mean that works are not an important part of growing into the likeness that Christ desires of us, and the benefits that we can receive for them in the here and now, and also the rewards that we will receive in eternity. And it will take me a while to lay that down. But there are things for us to do for Christ and what He desires, and not of ourselves. But I don't want to get too far into it. I want to finish reading this article. I just wanted to bring it to you as an introduction today, because it's vitally important. It's vitally important. I've said it before in my previous message, the body of Christ. That we are not lacking, quote, Christians who trust in Jesus Christ as their Savior. We are lacking Christians who recognize what they have been called to be a part of, and what they have been called to do. As I just read, they're not separate things. It's not Jesus Christ offering two acceptable standards for living the Christian life. The life of faith. A less demanding one for an ordinary Christian, and an optional, more challenging version for those who commit themselves to be disciples. And I pray that you stick around and that you see the truth of this and are set free. And realize that the things that we can do now have not only an impact here and now, more for others and not yourself, even though they may benefit you in the here and now, maybe, but more so for the benefit of others and for you as laying up rewards in heaven, in which Christ will reward us. And we'll see more about that topic as we get to it. But I wanted to do an introduction today. I hope you liked the video. Like I said, stick around, listen to more of these as they come out. I'm not done reading this article. Still got a couple more pages to go because I do want to finish it. So if you got something out of this, like it, share it, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it for this video. And I pray that y'all have a good day. And hopefully I sparked some interest in you to pursue this topic farther, and especially as we keep going. So thank you for watching A Daily Change of Mind, and I will talk to y'all later. Y'all have a good day.